Roja, and I am joined by Vanessa, my fellow Center for Youth Leadership member, for a discussion about teen dating violence. Before we get to our topic, we wanted to take a few minutes to bring you up to date with some of our campaigns.
Several weeks ago, we submitted a proposal to the Connecticut Department of Education's Voice for Change program for the mental health initiative at our school. In addition, between exams in January, we devoted a lot of time to raising awareness of human trafficking, especially its impact on children and teens in Connecticut. And so far this month, we have led lots of activities to honor Black History Month, including performances of Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is often referred to as the Black National Anthem. We also have done outreach about period equity and Black women and girls. We also posted hallway signs and the Pan-African flag in our hallways. And we plan to host a panel discussion about historically Black colleges and universities. Along with that, yesterday we met members of the Black Student Union at Darien High School. This was in response to the Darien's Board of Education decision to opt out of the open choice program, which would have allowed children from Norwalk to attend schools in Darien. As you may know, local politicians held a rally to urge the Darien board to reconsider the decision. The rally led a torrent of negative responses online, presumably from Darien residents, one of which directed Norwalk to, and I quote, "keep your troubled school system and its troubled minorities in your troubled town. Discussions with the Black Student Union will continue in a couple of weeks." Finally, we are preparing to testify during the current legislative session in Hartford on a number of issues, including mental health, services in school, child marriage, endometriosis, domestic violence and children, and menstrual products in schools.
All of that work has not diverted our attention from one of CYL's main issues, teen dating violence, which we'll talk about tonight. Connecticut statistics are troubling, and they are compounded by the reluctance of many teens to talk about abuse at the hands of their dating partners. According to a survey of 2,000 Connecticut high school students, 8% said that they have experienced physical dating violence. 12% have found by their dating partners to perform sex acts against their will, and 26% have experienced emotional dating abuse. To help us sort things out, we are joined by Anne Rodwell-Lawton, the Associate Director of the Domestic Violence Crisis Center, known as DVCC. The organization has offices in Newark and Stamford and is one of 18 domestic violence agencies in Connecticut. We have a lot of questions about dating violence, Anne, but let's start with an overview of your organization.
Let's shift our focus to teen dating violence. Tell us what it is and describe some of the red flags that teens should be aware of.
Great, thank you so much. I just want to say good evening. I'm really happy and excited to be here, and thank you to the Center for Youth Leadership and Norwalk ACTS for hosting these important conversations. So again, my name is Anne, and I work at the Domestic Violence Crisis Center. And Roja, to talk to what you mentioned a little bit about DVCC, and then we'll dive into those red flags, Vanessa. DVCC provides free and confidential services to individuals who are experiencing any level of abuse in their personal relationships. So that can be domestic violence, intimate partner violence, or teen dating violence. And our role is to assist victims and survivors in building a safer environment for themselves, possibly for their children or for their families. And we do this through offering a wide range of services, including 2 emergency safe houses. We have legal advocacy services that help when helps advocate for victims in any family violence cases. Also helps with applying for restraining orders. We have individual and group counseling, and we also have housing and financial advocacy, helping victims find safe and affordable housing, and also help them overcome the effects of financial abuse and increase their financial security and safety. And really, our work is centered around safety, healing, and hope, helping victims and survivors make informed decisions that aren't based in fear, and really having them understand the different options and resources that are available to them. And we serve 7 communities in Lower Fairfield County, including Norwalk. So that's a little bit about DVCC, and shifting over to talk about red flags. I'm really glad you asked this question, Vanessa, because red flags are often hard to recognize. They are behaviors that are often normalized or maybe minimized in our society. But we know when looking at teen dating violence, that they are indicators that there might be control in that relationship, and that the relationship is going to turn abusive or could turn abusive. And that's why it's important that we recognize those red flags early on so we can start having those conversations and addressing that behavior. So some of those red flags are things like excessive jealousy. Now, sometimes that behavior is normalized in saying, oh, that just means that the person I'm dating really cares about me, right? They just want me all to themselves, right? That's good. But actually, when we look at jealousy, it's a controlling behavior. There is a lack of trust there. So excessive jealousy is a very common red flag, especially that we see with teens. Another red flag would be constantly checking in, whether that is the abuser constantly checking in with the victim or survivor, or the victim and survivor always having to update them about their whereabouts, what class they're in, where they are after school. And that's really showing like a lack of independence, right? And so that constant checking in and crossing those boundaries. We also see isolation. That's a really common one as well, isolating someone from their friends and family. And it could be saying something like, you know, I don't want you to hang out with your friends. But it could also be things like insulting or putting down someone's friends, so they're less likely to hang out with them, right? So it might not be as direct. It might be more indirect, an indirect tactic to start isolating that survivor. And then finally, taking a relationship too quickly, being too serious too quickly in a relationship. We call this love bombing, and really talking about how relationships should go at a comfortable pace, right, for both parties involved. So those are some of the red flags that we often see. There are definitely more. And if Vanessa and Roja, you want to add to that, I'd be interested to see kind of what red flags you maybe have seen in teen relationships.
I definitely think that a red flag that a lot of people don't take into account until it gets to a certain extreme is definitely like not not really asking for consent for little things, even though they may seem not that, like it may not seem like it's that impactful, but even like someone's partner asking for their consent to kiss them or to like hug them or anything like that, because you never know when someone might be uncomfortable with that. And of course that can escalate to things more serious like sexual abuse or sexual assault. But even like those small things, if you can visibly see that your partner is uncomfortable with that and you haven't gone over those kinds of boundaries with your partner and they're just doing those kinds of things without asking for your consent at all, that's something that is a major red flag, because that can lead to way bigger problems later down the line in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with Vanessa. And like another big thing, like just the small little red flags that you may not notice initially because you're in like a different phase in relationship. You're like, oh, this is normal. Like one thing is if they're hanging around you too much, it becomes like every day you're with that person all the time. And some people might not notice at first that that's a little strange, but that is like a red flag, being a bit too possessive in nature, as you described. So I just wanted to know also, because we've talked about red flags, can you describe to me what a healthy teen dating relationship may look like?
Yes. And that's an important thing to talk about, right? We don't just want to talk about unhealthy behaviors or abuse. We also want to talk about healthy relationships because how do we know what they look like and how to engage in healthy behaviors if we're not taught that, right? And we often see relationships in the media and around us that might not be healthy. So really centering conversations around what healthy relationships look like is so important. So I would say what healthy relationships look like, they're often based in equality. So both individuals have the same amount of power. So that often involves compromise, meeting in the middle, both people having a say in both the big things and the small things, right? Both individuals having a say in, what do we want on our pizza tonight? Or, what do we want to do about prom? So that equality and that sharing of power is really important to a healthy relationship. I also think kind of what to touch upon what you talked about is independence, right? That you have your own hobbies and your own friends and your own things outside of that romantic dating relationship. Because we are still individuals, and that's very, very healthy that we can do our own things, but then come back together with our partner. And so we want independence in a relationship, and healthy relationships also bring out the best in each other. Like both partners build each other up, challenge each other in a good way. So that's I think a really important part of a healthy relationship. And then we have things like, trust and honesty, respect, a comfortable pace, right? So communication about what is comfortable for each other with the pace of the relationship, not going too fast or too slow. And then I also think it's helpful to talk about how healthy relationships make us feel, because sometimes that's easier to talk about or for teens to identify than to say like, oh, there's equality in this relationship. Like they can say, oh, this is how this relationship makes me feel, right? So healthy relationships should make us feel safe, right? Like emotionally safe, physically safe. They should feel comfortable, and they should feel fun, right? We should be in relationships that are fun and bring out the best in us and make us laugh. That's important as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. It's definitely like not that easy to like
Yeah.
understand what a healthy relationship looks like as a teenager, because it's like there's so many things in the media that you see, and so much of it isn't actually showing us very healthy relationships. So it's
Mhm.
definitely good to get your input on what you think a healthy teen relationship looks like. So moving on to the next question. Several years ago, CYL lobbied the Connecticut Department of Public Health to add the emotional abuse question to its student survey. Can you tell us what dating violence does to a teen's mental health?
Yes, and that's a really great step, adding that emotional abuse question to the student survey. A national survey indicated that 76% of teens who reported teen dating abuse reported experiencing emotional abuse in that relationship. So this is something that we need to continue to talk about, recognizing that abuse is not just physical. So a common tactic that abusers use to target a victim's mental health is emotional abuse. So that can be things like gaslighting the individual, which makes them kind of question reality. So saying things like, oh, I didn't push you against the locker that hard, like you're making that up. And that continue over time makes victims and survivors kind of question reality. Are they the ones that are going crazy? And also they believe that like they're to blame for what's happening. So emotional abuse is when a victim or survivor starts to believe what their abuser is saying about them. So they believe that they're to blame. And this often makes them feel hopeless. It makes them feel powerless, or makes it feel like they can't trust themselves. So that's why it's really helpful for teens who are experiencing this to get an outside perspective, to talk to an advocate or a counselor about this, to really kind of reframe those behaviors as tactics of abuse and control. And then talking about more long-term consequences of mental health, we know that teens who suffer dating abuse are subject to long-term consequences like eating disorders, risky sexual behavior, alcoholism, thoughts of suicide. And we also see anxiety and depression as a really common mental health symptoms of those who are experiencing abuse. So there are really profound impacts on teens' mental health, and we need to make sure we have services that can help teens who are experiencing emotional abuse.
Yeah.
I agree completely. But like, even when we have such a view on teen dating violence, I believe there's still some misconceptions within that. So what are some of the most common misconceptions about teen dating abuse?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first one that comes to mind, I would say, is people often say, oh, well, they minimize it, right? Oh, those are just kids being kids. Oh, they're just navigating their relationship, right? And minimizing how serious this can be, how, dangerous it can be. For example, I worked with a young lady who had to relocate to Connecticut from New York to escape her her ex, her boyfriend, because there was physical violence to that level where her family determined it was so important that they pick up and move states to escape the abuse. So this can be really serious, and we really need to take it seriously and not just dismiss it as kids being kids, or, oh, they're just navigating the relationship. We want to make sure we can give teens the help and support they need and make sure they are safe. I think another one that often comes to mind is people think that, oh, well, that teen's staying in that relationship, so it must not be bad. Like, why don't they just leave if it's really serious? And that kind of statement is really based in victim blaming. And this is such a complex issue. There's so many reasons why a teen might stay in an abusive relationship. They have fear. They have fear over maybe they're going to get in trouble if they tell an adult or ask for help. Maybe they're going to be blamed, or no one's going to believe them because their abuser is a star athlete, well liked, gets good grades. So they're thinking maybe no one's going to believe me, and they're going to believe the abuser. I also think fear of losing friends, right? If they're in similar friend groups, not knowing what friends are going to believe who, right? And not wanting to lose those friendships. In addition to possibly hoping this individual will change, right? But thinking they will change, having love for this person. And so that misconception of, oh, well, if they're staying, it must not be bad. Well, we know there are some really valid reasons why victims might feel like they need to stay in that relationship. Any questions about that?
I don't really have any questions, but I definitely agree with everything that you were saying, as well as another thing that I would like to add onto like why people might not leave abusive relationships. Also, a lot of the time their abuser makes them feel like they can't leave that relationship by degrading them and making them feel like no one else will ever appreciate them or love them, and that their abuser is the only person that will actually be able to give them that quote unquote love, even though they're experiencing a lot of abuse in that relationship, and that causes them to not want to leave, because if they do leave, they don't know if anyone else is going to actually be able to be in a relationship with them or want to just associate with them, because they're just being put down constantly.
Yeah. And that's really powerful, especially if this is someone's first dating experience, right? So they might not believe that they can recover from this and someone else will like them. And so you're right, those words can be so powerful. That's emotional abuse, right? And those are definitely dynamics that make it difficult for victims to leave.
Yeah. And moving on to like focus more on LGBTQ plus teens. So
Mhm.
two statistics jumped out at us about dating violence among teens who identified as LGBTQ plus. And
Mhm.
according to the Trevor Project, LGBTQ youth who experienced physical dating violence in the past year had significantly greater odds of reporting a past year suicide attempt. And close to 40% of LGBTQ youth did not tell anyone about their experience of physical dating violence. So can you talk to us about dating violence and LGBTQ plus teens?
Mhm. Yes, so I think it's really important that we highlight this population and their experience of teen dating violence for many reasons. One of the reasons is that they have unique power and control dynamics that can play out in those relationships, in unique ways that abusers can use their power and control. So things that we sometimes see in these relationships are things like purposefully misgendering a victim, or using a birth or dead name, right? That lack of respect, possibly restricting access to hormones for trans clients. We also see quite a lot is threatening to out the partner if they leave, particularly with teens who maybe aren't out yet. That is a real threat and a real concern for them. And also just, being made to feel ashamed about their sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and that emotional abuse often worsens that internalized homophobia and transphobia. So there are these unique power and control dynamics. And then there are also some barriers for LGBTQ teens to get services. They maybe don't think that the services are for them if they don't see, materials with relationships and individuals that look like them. And also just being worried about when they reach out for help, are they going to be respected and welcomed? And so it's really important that domestic violence agencies take active steps to have welcoming, affirming environments, because we know that LGBTQ folks are experiencing dating violence as well and deserve the same amount of resources and support.
Definitely.
And I just want to also talk about schools. As you may know, like health teachers are required to devote a designated number of hours to several topics, excluding teen dating violence. So what do you think schools can do to build on what health teachers do?
Well, first, health teachers are so important, and they do such great work, right? And we can't focus on our studies, have productive schooling and work lives, right, if we're not healthy. So like our health is so important and they do such great work. It would be lovely to have, a designated number of hours on this topic, because almost every single student in that class is going to have a relationship in their life that they're going to have to try and navigate and figure out, right? So these skills and these conversations are really important. I think another part of this conversation is, what can schools do outside of the health classes? Because we know that best practice is repetition, right? Consistent messaging. This isn't a one-time thing, a one and done thing. So school-wide initiatives are really important because they have that consistency. They can be done throughout the entire year. And it's showing that the administration at a school believes this is important, right? And so things like, in English class, discussing the relationship dynamics in a book that's being read, that can be incorporated into other places besides health class. It can be things like doing a school-wide, poster contest for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, integrating information about teen dating violence and resources into school announcements during February. There are so many different ways this can be integrated in a respectful, age-appropriate way. And DVCC is here to help and support schools in doing that, and also to help and support health teachers in covering these topics in lessons. I think it's important to have folks teaching these skills and these concepts who really understand the nuances, can challenge misconceptions, and also understand the resources that are available, and be able to connect students in real time to those resources and safety plan with them. But I would also love kind of your thoughts on what do you think schools can do to build upon what health teachers are doing? Because I think there could be so many creative things that schools could be doing.
Yeah, I legitimately just finished taking a health class this past semester, and I was lucky enough to have such an incredible teacher. I love that teacher so much. And my teacher did actually go over teen dating violence a little bit and just talked about abusive relationships and red flags and stuff like that. Although I feel like the health curriculum really lacks telling students about the in between like just a healthy relationship and a abusive relationship. I feel like they fail to show what that looks like, because relationships don't necessarily go from healthy to abusive in one day. You're not going to have physical violence happen to you from your partner in one day. It usually leads up, like, there's usually things that happen before that, and there's gaslighting and emotional manipulation and all of that stuff. And I feel like schools definitely need to focus more on showing that part of it, because that allows students to get out of those relationships like before it gets to that point, before it gets so bad that they're experiencing violence that is so obvious to the point where now it seems like they should leave, but they can't because they're already stuck into a relationship like this. And I feel like they definitely should do that in order to allow their students to get out of those relationships early on. And I also feel like not only in February, but just all throughout the school year, just our school should be more upfront about the services that they allow for students and that they have, because our school does have a lot of services for students. They have, of course, you have our guidance counselors, they have social workers, they have all those kinds of people who can definitely help students in those kinds of situations, and can also give them resources and places to go to if they need that. Like our school just isn't as transparent as it should be about those things. And I feel like they should open that up more. They should talk about it more, because then students who are struggling with these things, students who are in abusive relationships, and students who are experiencing dating violence, they're able to go to people, know that they have people that they can trust to go to and talk to, and get the help that they need to get out of that relationship. Is there anything you want to add to that, Roja?
I did want to say I completely agree, because looking at it and how our school it actually doesn't really put a spotlight on teen dating violence as it should. I found that through CYL, there was a few activities that we had done like that really opened my eyes. Like one of the biggest things was like we had some red flags on the floor that represented the cases of teen dating violence. And that kind of truly opened my eyes to the amount of cases. And I opened my eyes to the people around me, saying like, what situations could they be in that I don't even know about, and they may not know themselves. The idea of bringing awareness to these topics, it's so great. And unfortunately, like our schools really don't put that much attention on promoting these things throughout the whole year, as Vanessa said, making sure like students have it in the back of their mind, because one health class later and then you're done. It's not like that's never going to come back and apply to your life later. So how come we can't keep the health education going throughout all 4 years, and so that can stick with you throughout life?
Yeah. Also, another thing that I just want to add really quickly, we also have our house classes, which go throughout the entire year. And I definitely think that's a great opportunity for our schools to bring up the topic of teen dating violence, because especially right now during Black History Month, they have been trying to talk about that. And I feel like if you're going to talk about Black History Month, also they could do something for teen dating violence. And they should do that all throughout the year in order to make sure that students know the warning signs, know the red flags, know what they can do, know who they can go to, and like house focuses on mental health, students' mental health, and making sure that students are okay. And I feel like they should put more of an emphasis on those kinds of problems as well, not just, oh, we understand that you guys are stressed or those kinds of things, but also how can we help students who are in certain situations that they need to get out of.
Those are all, great ideas. And that's why, the Center for Youth Leadership is so important, because you guys have wonderful ideas and understand really what teens need, and they need something throughout the entire year and not a one and done.
So the next question that we have for you is, can you talk about the connection between growing up witnessing domestic violence and the generational cycle of abuse? And what steps do you think should be taken to address this issue?
Mhm. So growing up in a home where there is domestic violence present is the strongest predictor of a child becoming a perpetrator or a victim later on in life. So that could be later on in life, maybe in their teen years, right? Being involved in teen dating violence, or as an adult, and being a perpetrator or a victim of domestic violence. So if we really want to prevent violence in our communities, we have to be thinking about how we can help and support children who are being exposed to domestic violence. And that's part of DVCC's mission, right? We want to put ourselves out of business. We want to prevent domestic violence so this doesn't happen. And we know that, children who are witnessing domestic violence, they're actively interpreting what's going on, right? And trying to make sense of what's happening. So they maybe believe this is normal, right? This is how people who love each other, kind of how they treat each other, right? Domestic violence is often a learned behavior. And so if we want to prevent domestic violence, we really need to prioritize services for children and teens so that we can stop that generational cycle of abuse.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
And I think like that is just really a really important way to take a look at people's perspectives within these situations, because it's really different for everybody. And just looking at how it may come to be is a big way to look at how to stop the origination of this, and making sure that that education is reaching all types of people.
Mhm.
And also, one of the things that comes up when thinking about how to educate other students and in general, just the population, about teen dating violence in general. One of the things we came across when we were doing our research was that the Yale School of Public Health is actually having professors at the school. They created what they call Investigate, which is a relationship game for Black heterosexual girls. Can you talk about how the potential impact that games and apps have on helping teens understanding teen dating violence?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really interested in that game and seeing whether it's an effective teaching tool, and the studies that will be done about it, about helping reduce both the rates of HIV infection and teaching about dating violence. And games and apps really are great teaching tools for a few different reasons. They are a non-threatening way to engage in conversations that might be scary or hard, right? They also are places where youth can often take risks that they wouldn't take maybe in a classroom or in real life, right? So youth maybe take more risks and are more eager to learn within that environment. And really any way that you can help apply concepts, right, to scenarios and experiences. That's a really great way to solidify learning. So those things are all really great. I think a thing to think about when using an app or a game to talk about teen dating violence is really making sure there is some kind of resource for follow-up. So for teens who have questions, teens who maybe are triggered by the content, making sure there is a hotline number available or resources available, so people aren't kind of left having to figure it out on their own, or if they're being triggered. So that's always something we always want to kind of keep in the back of our mind when we're thinking about games or apps, particularly around topics like teen dating violence.
I completely agree, especially because if someone's actually playing one of those games, they'd maybe have a realization in the midst of that, and then maybe even question, is this really applicable to me and my relationship? And they would have follow-up questions trying to figure out what's going on. And
Yeah.
that would be an excellent way to just open people's eyes to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
with what both of you said, of course. And especially talking about how the game Investigate, which like it was a relationship game for Black heterosexual girls. And there's also a topic that isn't really addressed when it comes to teen dating violence and abusive relationships in general. So what do domestic violence agencies like yours do to engage boys into the conversation of dating violence and healthy dating relationships?
Yeah, engagement of boys and men in this work is really important. They are important key partners. And so for our youth prevention education programs that we do in many local schools, that we do in my youth serving organizations, we always try to do that co-ed, because if we're really talking about primary prevention, we need to educate the entire community, right? Including boys and men. I think there are some barriers for boys and men getting involved in this work. I think there's maybe a stigma around it. People ask questions like, well, why do you care about that? That's a women's issue. Were you abused? Did you abuse someone? Is that why you're involved? So I think there's some stigma for boys and men to be engaged in this work, but it's so important because they have the power and are well positioned to hold other boys and men accountable, right? To be able to challenge toxic masculinity, to be able to challenge that domestic violence joke or that joke about abuse. And so engaging them, giving them the skills, getting their feedback is really important. There is a initiative through our statewide coalition, CCDV, around coaching boys into men. This is an evidence-based program that utilizes coaches and their influence over their male athletes to have conversations about that violence doesn't equal strength, and how do you translate aggression and strength on the field to off the field and into your relationships. And so that is something that DVCC can help and support schools and coaches with. There's a curriculum with it, but that's a really great tool and a really great avenue for having those conversations with boys. I would love to hear your thoughts on how you think we can engage boys in this work and in these conversations.
I definitely agree with everything that you were saying. I feel like when we were learning about dating violence and when we were learning about abusive relationships and red flags and all of those kinds of things, it should always be something that both sexes are learning about, not just females, because everyone can experience dating violence, and abusive relationships don't just happen between a male and a female having the female be abused. It can happen in all sorts of relationships and in LGBTQ plus relationships, and a female can abuse their male partner. And it's just so important to be able to spread all that information out and make sure that everyone gets to know about it. So I feel like definitely making sure that it's like talked about in, like, if we were going to do it in like house, for example, our house classes are split up by sex. So if they were going to talk about it it should 100% be talked about in both classes. And if maybe they want to do something a little bit different to maybe reach their target audience better and get the message across better, they could do that. But the same message needs to be communicated to both the females and the males, because no matter what, everyone should be able to have an awareness about dating violence, and everyone should be able to see the warning flag, not the warning flags, the red flags of having like an abusive relationship or being in an abusive relationship. And that's something that I feel like both sexes should be able to have access to all the time.
Absolutely.
As you said, it's really important that we have all different types of people involved within the education of teen dating violence in general. And especially I found like there is a big stigma against boys and men in general, and just having an involvement in learning about teen dating violence and dating violence. And I found that like there's these things that occur where, yes, they can hold each other accountable in this education. It's so important. Like there's these situations we've all seen in movies where there's locker room talk and then everyone laughs it off. Maybe someone's thinking in their head, oh, this is wrong, but they never act on it. But if they have this knowledge with them, then they can use it to help inform the others around them, and they'll feel strong about, I have these statistics to back me up. This is the right thing to do. It's just being able, like things spread by word of mouth. And it's just so powerful to have that knowledge within everybody. And if everyone knows the same thing, then they know what is right. And so I also just wanted to move on to this next question. That was a great topic. Members of CYL testify every year before committees of the Connecticut General Assembly. One of the issues we will address during this legislative session is Senate Bill 5, which would provide domestic violence agencies with funding for child advocates. Can you tell us about the work of the child advocates?
Yes, I can. And we are asking the legislators as part of our statewide coalition for $1.4 million specifically for youth and family counseling. There is no state funding for this program, currently only, wait for it, $11,500 of federal pass-through money to fund this work with youth and children. And so our coalition is asking for 1.4 million in state funding to cover 18 youth and family advocates. That would be one per site. And DVCC actually has 2 sites, one in Norwalk and one in Stamford. So we would be able to add 2 full-time youth and family advocates to our work. We already have one youth and family counselor, and their work is so important. Our youth and family counseling helps and supports children and youth who are experiencing domestic violence as either a primary or a secondary victim. And they also help teens who are experiencing teen dating violence. So our youth and family counselor is able to communicate and engage with both the young ones, the little kiddos, and teens. And really that work is around providing age-appropriate education on those domestic violence dynamics that are happening. It's around safety planning with individuals, whether that's a child, safety planning with them about how to stay safe in their house, or safety planning with a teen about how to stay safe in their relationship. And also talking about coping skills and trauma responses, right? We talked about anxiety, depression symptoms happening for teens. So having someone who can talk about what those look like and how to manage that and some coping skills. And I can give you kind of an example of what this work entails and why it's so important. So our youth and family counselor recently was working with a teen who had just broken up with their abuser, and their abuser was in their school. And the administration wasn't necessarily being very victim-centered in working with this victim. And so they asked us to contact the school administrators to talk about the teen safety, talk about how they were being harassed and stalked, and that the abuser should be the one to change their class schedule, right? Not the victim. And we also were able to advocate for them to help the school understand what the protective order said and what was in place and how they could help implement that within the school. So not only did our youth and family counselor, safety plan, help address the trauma that this teen was experiencing, it's also helping advocate for the teen within their school system. And so this work is really important, and the $1.4 million in funding really would show how the state is prioritizing this work and really could make such a positive impact in our community.
Yeah, I definitely think so as well. And it's crazy to me to think like you get so little money currently to fund all of this, and you are doing amazing work and your organization is doing amazing work. And it's really good because it gives these people somewhere to go, and like it gives them like a solution. It allows them to get the help that they need, and that's such an important thing when people are in certain situations like domestic violence, or they're in situations of teen dating violence or anything like that. So let's close this discussion with one question. What should people our age do if we know someone is experiencing dating abuse?
Okay, well, we could talk kind of for hours about how do we help and support teens, any victim of any age who's experiencing abuse, because again, these are really complex things. But I'll say a few things to this. I think we really need to start from a place of being supportive and non-judgmental. We know being supportive and non-judgmental really helps those who are experiencing trauma heal. And no one who has been experiencing trauma wants someone to come to them and tell them what to do, right? And so being supportive and non-judgmental is reminding them that it's not their fault, right? And also being there for them. We know that isolation happens a lot in teen dating abuse. So just showing up for your friend, calling them, texting them, hanging out with them, trying to decrease that isolation. That can be one little small step to help and support them. And when they're ready to talk about what they're experiencing, it's helpful to point out what we've seen or what we know, right? So if it can say, I've noticed this, right? I've noticed this behavior. How does that make you feel? We also can talk about what they deserve. So saying you deserve to feel safe, right? You deserve to feel respected in this relationship. And we also want to focus on the behavior of the abuser and not them as a person, right? No one likes someone attacking the person they're dating, right? No matter what the kind of situation is. So we want to say that behavior is not okay, right? And then again, no one likes to be told what to do. So really just saying there's help and support available. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to have all the answers, but there are resources. And would you like me to help connect you with them? Would you like me to help you make that call? Right? Because that can be a really scary first step. And so again, just being supportive, reminding them what they deserve, being non-judgmental, meeting them where they're at, while also saying, you deserve to feel safe. You deserve to feel respected, right? And I'm concerned about you.
Yeah, I definitely 100% agree. And I also feel like another thing is to always ask the person how they would like you to help them in that situation, instead of just going in and like telling them things, and like instead of like overwhelming them with things. People can like feel very overwhelmed like super easily if you're just going like at them with a bunch of like advice and things to do. It's more, do you just need someone to listen to you? Do you just need someone to like be there, just be there next to you, be there on the phone with you? Anything like that. It's always so important to ask them what they would like from you, and be able to support them in that way, as well as of course tell them about the resources that are available, and make sure to tell them that the abuse that they're experiencing, they don't deserve that, and that's not something that they should continue dealing with. That's something that they should try and get help for, to get out of. So I definitely think that's something that's super important as well. And with that, we've come to the close of tonight's discussion. Thanks a lot to Anne from the Domestic Violence Crisis Center for joining us. And thank you so much to the staff of Norwalk Acts for the technical support. And make sure you join us in March for another town hall discussion. Remember, when things appear hopeless, people our age are the hope. Thanks for listening and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.